because I'm not for everyone, not for every job, not for every person. And I'm very comfortable in my skin. And that's great because it's an obvious truth. You're not going to be for everyone, right? But for so long, we carry this burden on ourselves of why don't they like me? Or why wasn't I chosen? And it's because there's a different path for you. It wasn't for you. It wasn't meant for you. That's the only woo-woo that I give into because I really believe it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wynn podcast. My name is Jessie Grossman. I am your host this week and every week. I'm really happy to be back here with you guys. Gosh, there's a couple announcements, but this episode is just especially for Mental Health Awareness Month. So I'm sure you clicked in based on the title. We will not disappoint. I have a special guest today. I'll introduce her shortly. And it's just meant to be a nice, cathartic, let's just dive into it and be honest about us as human beings type of episode. But before we do, and please stick around because it's going to be so good, I promise. We have so many cool events coming up. The one that I will focus on right now is my favorite. It's the Best in Influencer Tech. We've done this twice a year since 2020, and it's one of our most popular events. People love it. So thank you guys for geeking out with me. I know that you guys are working your butts off all day, every day, and you want more support. You want, to do your job even better. And what's the best way to sort of amplify the work that you're doing? It's having good tech to support it. So the Best Influencer Tech, it's an event, like I mentioned, we've done many times before. This one will absolutely not disappoint. We have a special guest this time around who I'll be revealing soon. Hint, hint, it's one of the social platforms. And what the tech companies who are participating will be doing is demoing their products for you. You have an opportunity to ask live questions in the chat, but you will get a full demo and compare them to see what's the latest and greatest tools out there in terms of influencer discovery and search, in terms of campaign management, analytics, payments, workflows. It runs the gamut. We've got a wonderful, diverse set of demoists. That's not a word. I want to say panelists, but people who will be demoing for you. And one of the best parts, in my opinion, about this event is that all of our participants will be offering special promotions, discounts, and offers, especially just for the Wynn community. These discounts never happen, you guys. And it's pretty much a prerequisite for us that if you participate, you got to give back to our community. So we're super grateful. Sign up. It's a completely free event. It's packed full of value. And I'm just really excited that we're doing it again. So go to iamwim.com/tech. We make it very easy. Sign up. June 20th, starts at 12 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be so good, you guys. All right. We are going to dive into our episode today. It is with a good friend of mine. Her name is Sourma Kauri. She is a influencer marketing consultant, and she's got over 8 years of experience in the influencer and creator economy. She's collaborated with the Fortune 500 brands across gaming, tech, and beauty, including Meta, Epic Games, and L'Oreal. She's also worked with prominent creators like Kirsty and Alicia McCarvell, driven by a passion for transformative creator potential. She really excels at crafting compelling narratives that foster brand success and vibrant communities. She brings all of this experience to the table, and today we're just getting Sourma as a person. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about hormones. We're talking about women's health and how all of this affects us as people, and all of this affects our work and literally everything we touch, and how we need to start prioritizing these things so we feel better, we think better, and just how to get to an optimal state that we feel our best. And it's such an important topic that not enough of us are talking about, leaning in heavily to the fact that we are a women's focused organization. So a lot of it will revolve around that today. and just a chat amongst women. So without further ado, it's a very personal and heartfelt episode. I hope you enjoy. I hope you take something from this. I hope you share this episode and comment on it with, what you've been through, how you feel about the topics we're getting into, and sit back and relax. It's a really good one. This show is sponsored by Women in Influencer Marketing, better known as WIM, the best online community for the creator economy. You will meet fellow influencer marketers, you'll meet brands, you'll meet talent agencies to talk shop, get hired, and even find a mentor. When you become a member, do not forget to check out all of our incredible resources. For example, we have dozens of masterclasses from the top voices at TikTok, at YouTube, award-winning agencies, and women who are paving the way for us all. So if you want the chance to network with a who's who in influencer marketing, check out what it takes to become a member. Make more money and have fun doing it. Visit iamwim.com/join. That's iamwim.com/join today. And I so look forward to seeing you more around the community. I'm just excited to have you on the show.
Yeah.
You've been such a prominent person in the community in general and WIM. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we're technically recording this during Mental Health Awareness Month. And it's such a huge topic. For us to even tackle today, we're certainly never going to tackle everything. And there's just so much to talk about. So my goal for today and having you on is really just to learn your story a little bit, and for us to both be vulnerable about how what mental health even means to us, our experiences. And as a women's focused organization, I think we need to talk so much more openly and often about the topic of mental health. And our industry is tough sometimes in that capacity. So with all that being said, welcome, and how are you?
Thank you. I'm much better. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay. You want to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Better from what?
Ever since 2020, nothing has been the same. And I think that's the story of everyone across the world. And I recognized that last year. Last year was probably the worst year of my career. Lots of ups and downs. Was looking for a job for so long. And it was really scared because usually it never took longer than 3 months to find a job. And I'd been 5 or 6, and I was freaking out. And before that, starting from 2020 and what happened after I was laid off from my job, which I loved, I was obsessed with, I couldn't find anything better, frankly. I was spoiled from where I came from. And I went to a bunch of different agencies, and one was worse than the other. Or it just wasn't working out for me. And it was just I had an expectation, and they weren't delivering on the expectation of my own, right, that I had set. And it was really hard because you start to question yourself. You start to doubt yourself. That imposter syndrome comes creeping in and takes over. And at the same time, what I didn't realize at the time was there was a hormone imbalance in my body. And
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. It's something that not enough women just talk about, the effect of hormones. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So I'm in my 40s. I'm never ashamed to admit my age. And I was doing all the right things. I was going to therapy, journaling, meditating, eating a healthy diet at home. I cook a lot at home already. Try to go to the gym probably 3 times a week. So I'm something's not adding up. Something's got to give. And so thanks to TikTok, and there is a doctor, I don't remember her name. I think it's Dr. Claire, but she specializes in women's health and talks a lot about the history and a lot about the things that most women don't know because we as a society don't prioritize women's health. And educate one another, and patients on women's health. And she talked about premenopause and all the symptoms. And I was like, yep, I have that. Yep, I have that. And it just was finally, I was like, oh my God, I think this is what it is. And so it sort of happened before just what coming up on my For You page and then having conversations with my therapist and then coming to the realization, I think it's hormones. So went to the gynecologist, and thankfully, like, they specialize in women's health. So I think that's really important for women to understand is like when you're choosing your doctor, especially your OBGYN, you want to make sure that they are even board certified, frankly, in women's health. And my doctor here in LA has a clinic and it's called pellet therapy. So basically she has a practice where if you have the hormone imbalance, you can go to her practice and get treatment. And so, yeah, went to the doctor, checked my hormones and found like testosterone was extremely low. I know that sounds weird because you're like, wait, women need testosterone? It's like, yeah, we just need a little bit, not as much as men do. And mine was extremely low. Ironically, my estrogen was through the roof. Don't want to have kids, but okay. So I was like, thank God, finally, there's like something I can put, there's a solution here. And so I chose hormone replacement therapy. And basically you have two options. One is it's in office and it's an insertion in office, like on the side, like by your hip, or you do cream. And I chose the insertion because that's like immediate relief. And so the pro is immediate relief. The con is it's out of pocket. So sadly, it's another one of these expenses that is not covered by insurance. So yeah, so I took a leap of faith. I was like, I have to do this. I have to try this out. And I've been on it for almost 2 years, I think. And I go every 3 months. And the craziest thing happens is like 2 weeks before my next appointment, I start to feel the foggy brain, the anxiety, the like just all of the symptoms that you get, and I'm like, and I have to almost remind myself. And so now I like put a calendar reminder of like, you're not going crazy.
It's hormones and you can almost predict it. I mean, that's so fascinating. And like, thank goodness that like, there's things like this is what I was talking about when we first started getting on here. It's just like, if more people just shared this information so that we can just be aware of it, then you can go to a doctor and say, hey, like, I'm aware of this. I don't know if that's what it is, but like, here's a lead in some direction, like here's a possibility. And then to be able to sort of identify clearly with like, what is it? A blood test, I would assume, right? To see what your hormones like are, leveled out at. And then to also have a treatment that you're getting. And it's so effective. In fact, a few weeks or a couple months, I guess, into it, you see the effects of it wearing off.
Immediately, I feel it as well.
And immediately you feel it when you get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Is so important. I think, and the problem with it is like, we've been made to believe that this thing has these side effects. There has been a very like old peer review and it got pulled because it was inaccurate and it accused of like having some type of cancer. I think it was breast cancer or whatever. And it's actually not true. And so like, that's the thing you're also combating is this false, narrative that this thing actually isn't healthy for you and you shouldn't try, and so it's been around. Hormone replacement therapy has been around for over 20, 30 years, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So like, we just don't have we're just not educated, and frankly, we can't even rely on all of our doctors of having this knowledge because this one doctor that I'm talking about, she says like, even when I was a resident, I didn't know what this was. And I had to learn because I wanted to be an expert in this area and help women. So
yeah. And so talk to us about like, before you even identified what was the issue, how did you experience your symptoms like on a day-to-day basis?
So what I was experiencing was I couldn't function the same way I function. Like I handle high pressure, like intense work situations. And I thrive in those environments. All of a sudden, it was extremely overwhelming. I could not focus. I was having panic attacks. My anxiety was just through the roof. I'm crying more. And I don't know even like, why is everything making me cry? Why am I so sensitive to these things? So you start to recognize something's not right. Like something feels off and you can't put your finger on it because again, you're not educated on what it could be.
And where to even start, like where, like, is it this part of my body, that part, like you don't even know where to begin to diagnose.
And crazy as this sounds, premenopause actually begins in your 30s. So we sort of go through it for like a good 10 years before even getting menopause.
Sure.
So what that means is, like, for me, I'm prolonging the inevitable, being on hormone. And I'm like, great, I will stay on for the rest of my life if that means I have to have my period every month.
Right? Let's prolong this thing. I'll happily prolong that.
Exactly.
And so tell us a little bit about more like once, I'm curious, like, did you pretty immediately find the right doctor and find the right diagnosis? Because like, I'll speak super personally, like at different parts of my life, I've had different health issues.
Yeah.
And, I've had a pretty unfortunate experience with doctors, like not, just I feel like I'm being like passed around and no one's helping me. And it's like, that's why I came to you, like, because I don't know. And this is what you do for a living. And so I'm curious, like, what your experience was. Did you pretty immediately figure out what the problem was, or did you have to sort of go down a longer path?
So it's funny you mentioned this. I think I recognized I needed a functional medicine doctor a long time ago, like probably like 20 years ago, because of the symptoms I was having with other things. So it was not, so in my late 20s, 30s, I was having a hard time losing weight and I couldn't figure out why. So then you always hear about a thyroid issue. And so I couldn't go, for some reason, I think I was probably watched a documentary or something where I knew I couldn't go just a regular Western medicine doctor. Now, I will say with a big disclaimer, I am not one of those like woo-woo, like you go to just some random person who calls themselves a doctor. No, like you have to be, went to actual medical school and practiced and everything. So the difference with a functional medicine doctor, and similar to like they call them preventative medicine, is just that. They're trying to get to the root of the problem. They're not trying to just put a Band-Aid on it and give you just another pill to take. Now, a lot of that means that you have to be extremely proactive because you are your best advocate. So you have to know all the things as well and ask all the questions. And yeah, I went to a functional medicine doctor. And again, unfortunately, because a lot of that isn't covered with insurance, you do end up paying some of it out of pocket, like a consultation. You'll have to pay out of pocket. Or let's say it's not, obviously medications that you're getting prescribed, but they're supplements. Those are usually out of pocket. I've been really proactive. Like every doctor I've ever been to, I'm like, okay, tell me the name of it and then let me do research. And then I will go and purchase it myself because I'll always find a better deal. Like there's some that I can't. I have to go through my doctor. But yeah, for the most part, there's a lot of work. You know what I mean? It's not easy to take.
No, I feel like taking charge of your own like health is not easy at all. I appreciate you saying that because I struggle with this with even like my fiance is like a few things that like reasons that I'm like, go to the doctor. And like, he's like, it's so much work. Like, it's not like you just go, they diagnose you and you get a treatment.
Yeah.
It's like you go this and you got to get this test and you got to get the follow-up. Then, maybe they have more tests to take and it almost feels like another full-time job. And as women, as people work in influencer marketing, like or so many professions, like you're just already overwhelmed with life, like already. Yeah. Of course, like the upside is that it's like, well, theoretically, if I get ahead of this thing, it will unlock the other things and make the rest of my life simpler, feel better, all that stuff. But it's hard. And it's like mentally taxing while you're going through it, while you're trying to fix it, maybe and sometimes with the treatments. So like, how have you sort of like, or have you, like gotten ahead of that, the mental hardship of it all?
Yeah, the mental hardship, the way that I handle that now, I've gone to therapy for many years and never am against it. Right now, I'm not because I feel really good mentally. There's a part of me that believes like, oh, I don't want to feel like I have to go see you in order for me to solve this problem. Like I need to figure out how I got to solve it first. And if there's a pattern of behavior that I'm displaying that seems to be, it's not working, so why do I keep doing this? Then I think, oh, I probably need to go to a therapist again. So until that happens, I haven't gone to one. And so the way that I deal with it, anything mentally these days, is journaling. Every morning, I wake up an hour before I start work, I journal, and then I meditate for 20 minutes. And that has been godsend, honestly. That's really life-changing.
So I would love to dig into that because my therapist for, oh my gosh, at least a year, probably way longer than that, has been like, you got to journal, meditate. Like I have anxiety. She's just like, meditation could really help. I can't do it. I don't want to say I can't do it. I'm not doing it. So like, was it always sort of easy for you to do that?
I'm such an intense person, and my mind is in so many places because I want to do so many things. It starts with like 5 minutes. So like 5 minutes, it's like you're quiet and you're recognizing. It's more like being aware of the thoughts. And that's where it begins, right? So the beginner is be aware of your thoughts. Say to yourself, oh, I'm just aware. I just had this thought that I should actually just be quiet right now. My mind needs to be quiet. And then you just then add some minutes to that every time. So as soon as you feel comfortable with the 5 minutes and you realize like it's been a week me doing for 5 minutes and my mind is clear and it's quiet and I'm not thinking of a bunch of things, then you can like go up to 10 minutes. And then you do just a different kind of meditation. You use head space, right? If you want. And you try one of their guided ones. And today I use like very specific ones that are really about focusing on the future and envisioning your life in the future today in your body. And it's very like intense breathing and intense like holding. It's a lot and I love it. And doing that alone, life-changing.
Well, tell me more because tell me more. I don't know. I've heard a lot of benefits of it, but I mostly just hear like it's life-changing. I hear that like it's so beneficial. I do it all the time, but like how does it really help you? Like, is it like, how does it really help you?
It's what it's doing is it is shifting my mind to quiet down, just to calm down. Everything will be fine. You will get to it. You know what I mean? And it's not about this like very chaotic, fear-based survival mode brain. And the thing that I learned about the brain that I never knew before was that the brain is always going to be in survival mode because that's how we were biologically created. We were created to be protected, always making sure but the problem is in today's world and what we see in media makes us feel like that 24/7, like we're in survival mode when we're not actually, like everything is fine. So I think that's a really big reason why meditation is so important, that you sort of have to tell your mind all over again. And tell your mind all over again, like, everything is okay. You're not going to die. There's not a tiger or a bear, you're talking about with TikTok running after you, you know what I mean? Or a man.
A caveman running after you. No, but it's so interesting because like, I don't know, I almost have a sense that like people these days, quote unquote, are just like more and more anxious than ever before. Like I'm one of them. And like, we've just never had so much activity around us at once, right? And like access to information at our fingertips and like inundated with so much. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it makes sense that it's just like naturally super overwhelming. And so like to combat that, like what you keep saying reminds me that like things in our body, our brains, our, all of the different elements of our bodies, like it's like any muscle. You have to train it to do what you need or want it to do. That repetition is just hard for me. So that's why I'm like, I need to like really be told like, no, Jess, like seriously, it's improved my life so much because of X, Y, Z. I need to be like jealous of what you're doing in order to like convince my stubborn brain to like, it's like the ADHD part of my brain where I'm like, repetition, that's hard.
I think there'll just come a time where you'll just give in because like clearly you may just not be ready for it. You know what I mean? And so like, I say with everything in life, you should never force yourself. It's like you'll come to that point where you're just like, you know what? I'm ready. I'm ready to start this new thing.
So question for you, you said you quiet your mind.
Yeah.
That sounds like a little scary to me.
Okay.
Like what's gonna creep in without the chaos or without the noise that's of our everyday life? Do you ever feel like that?
Never. So It's probably because it's twofold. One fold is I grew up in a very loud family that was always extremely loud. And ever since I've been living on my own for how many years, I don't like noise anymore. I don't like loud screaming. Yeah, I don't like any of that. I can handle it. I could be in, a room with it. It's fine because I'm used to it. Also, my job is extremely high stress. And so I will force myself, like the first hour of work, I don't have Slack open. I don't have email open. I do know what my tasks are. So I focus on those things and I need complete silence. So usually I will give myself that complete silence while I'm working because I'm the most focused. I also know like my brain operates, it's the most optimal at 10 a.m. So I know that you can get the best out of me in that first out, that 1 hour from 10 to 11. The other thing that I have been introduced to by a therapist was bilateral music. Bilateral music is basically you hear sounds and they go back and forth, right to left ear, and it helps you stay focused. And it's, again, life-changing.
So it's like from, what is it, mono, like, what is it called? Like, I don't know. But when you have like two different earphones in, so the sound is in one, the sound's going from one.
It's a very soothing sound. It's almost like, like when you're in a sound bath or you're doing yoga, but the music is going, it's perfectly set and made to go from left to right. And so I believe what it does is just helps the brain balance and stay focused. Also, what I've realized too is because of social media and because of always being on our phones, we're all a little ADHD.
So I'm not alone.
I've seen literal CEOs from these big companies talk about how difficult it is for them to get off their phones. And when I heard that, I'm like, oh, we're all going through this. Like, this is a whole global problem.
So I love that you seem to be protective of your environment, as you work or even throughout your life. So it sounds like, you're like, I close Slack for the, X amount of time, email, et cetera, et cetera. What else has really been a game changer for you? It sounds like sound is, and I totally relate to that. Like I'm a podcast listener or like sometimes I enjoy having things on in the background because I sense that it like lightens my mood. But when I need to focus, absolutely not. Like I need silence. And it's the opposite. When I used to go into an office, I always preferred to work remote because it would be so frustrating to me to be in the middle of something and then somebody like, hey, Joss, can you help me with this? Hey, Joss. And I'm like, I'm going to go crazy. It's it's beyond annoying. It's like to my core. It's like I'm physically uncomfortable. So I get the sensitivity to noise, but just distractions. It sounds like it's like a focusing tactic.
Yeah.
What other kinds of strategies have you implemented that have really worked for you?
Yeah. When I'm really stressed and I want to freaking scream and just go off on someone, a lot of times because it's my therapy is cooking and because I work from home, if it's like breakfast or lunch and I have time, like 30 minutes, I go and cook. I'll make a quick omelet and and then that just helps me clear my head and I'm not emotionally attached to the problem. I'm able to detach and then think more clearly and then respond accordingly.
I'm so intrigued. Like, do you think that it's like, is it the aromas? Is it the doing something with your hands that gets you out of your head? Like, what actually is it in the cooking that
I think it's the doing it with my hands, and I have to be focused. Like what I'm doing, there's steps to this thing to get to the end result. So I have to focus on this thing, and now I can't focus on my emotional problem that I just had. So now it's going in the back of my brain, which is what it should. Or removed altogether, because you never should respond to something emotionally.
Quick question for you guys. How much do you love redlining agreements? Yeah, me too. Let me tell you about our latest sponsor called Caveat. So Caveat with K is an AI-powered contracting platform that simplifies and automates your contracts. It'll hugely improve the way that you review partnership agreements. So if you're a media company or an entertainment company or a management firm, it's a must-have tool. Look, sometimes you do need to hire a lawyer, an expensive lawyer nonetheless, to work on an agreement because it's over a certain threshold, and a good lawyer can be invaluable. But what about about all those other partnerships, those other contracts that are for $5,000 or even like $1,000? That's where Caveat comes in to support you and your team through AI to process your contracts to gain a competitive edge through data-driven insights and automatic AI-driven red lines. It's game-changing tech, and it's founded by 3 brilliant women. So you know why I'm out here supporting it. Get time back in your day because Caveat will help you with the part of your business that may be your least favorite. So head to our website. It's iamwim.com/caveat for a completely free trial. That's iamwim.com/KAVEAT. I hope you guys love it as much as I do. So then you cook your delicious omelet, you eat your delicious omelet, like emotions are a little bit lessened. And then what?
And then I write what I want to say.
You write down what you want to say. Okay.
I want to say, and then I zhuzh it to make it sound nicer, as nice as possible. And then, and then I always, every single time, or I just don't, right? Like, or like it's gone where I'm just like, oh my God, that wasn't that big of a deal. I'm being such a brat. Oh, my ego. That's another thing. Recognizing the ego. Like, oh, my ego is hurt. I'm not really hurt like by that. And there's a difference between the two.
Is that a skill that you've had to refine over time? Like identifying and then making a conscious decision to say like, that's just my ego and don't react if that's the cause?
100%. Yeah, because like even when you're rejected in any sort of circumstance, I'm like, okay, bring on the rejection because I'm not for everyone. I'm not for every job, not for every person. And I'm very comfortable in my skin. And that's great because it's an obvious truth. You're not going to be for everyone, right? But for so long, we carry this burden on ourselves of like, why don't they like me? Or why wasn't I chosen? And it's like, because there's a different path for you. It wasn't for you, wasn't meant for you. Like that's the only woo-woo that I give into because I really believe that.
I believe it too. So call it woo. It's fine. I'm woo there as well. So when you are in like your best headspace and you're feeling your most confident and you're feeling your most clear, like how do you know? Like what else do you feel? How does it manifest in your life?
It's such a great question. It manifests in giving. I'm giving more. I'm giving more of my time, my energy to people that I love, of course, first and foremost. I'm creative more, so I'm probably cooking more. I may be creating TikToks and have like a lot of fun things to like post because I do love doing that. Those would probably be the main ones. Or I'm just coming up with ideas like, oh my God, I can't wait to like be social and do this. I'm going to reach out to them and be like, hey, let's set up this or travel. Like, hey, why don't we go here? That's when I'm in my peak.
Yeah, I love that. And because I feel like mental health, it feels so personal. It's like one of the most personal things where I think some people feel uncomfortable talking about it. Mm-hmm. Certainly most of us feel uncomfortable talking about it when you're going through it, right? Like when you're feeling super legitimately anxious, you're feeling super depressed, like that's the hardest moment to have these conversations because you're just feeling your most vulnerable. But I think it hopefully will just generally help us all feel more comfortable just talking about it. If more people just do, you sort of destigmatize the conversation in the first place. But how do you deal with your loved ones, family, friends, coworkers, even sometimes, who you sort of identify independently seem like they're struggling? Because that's a very sensitive topic, right? Topic in that like, it's not my issue. Where am I? I don't want to overstep, but I want to help. I want to support. How do you approach it when you sort of see what you've experienced in someone else?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think it just depends on my relationship with the person. I want to be like authentic and candid, but I also don't want to come across as like, I'm your savior. I'm here to help you. It doesn't feel right. And when I sense it, because I can sense those things really quickly in people. And I never come out and just say it. I sort of just immediately start helping or immediately start asking. Like for example, when it's colleagues, it's like I sidebar. I'm like, hey, how's it going? You're doing a really good job. I love the way that you handled that. Or what can I do to help? Hey, here are these like resources that you could use that'll be easier for you to get through what you're doing right now because I've already done them already. And I'm in a different stage. So with coworkers, it's that. And then in person, when I was with coworkers, it was more like, do you want to go out for, drinks afterwards, happy hour, or let's go out for lunch today, and just kind of get them out of. And then even when I do, and even if I have done that, I still don't mention it. I still just allow them to be comfortable and say whatever in that moment. I've noticed that like, as I get older, you have to just allow people to like open up to you. It's only with loved ones that I'm very direct and I'm more direct. And I'm just like, how are you doing? I haven't heard from you in a while. I called you a few times and you didn't respond. So I'm kind of worried. Are you good? Do you need anything? Can I Uber Eats you something or, or like Instacart you something, whatever it is you need. And then I just show up for them, like especially my friends, they're like my family. So like I show up for them for everything because they've shown up for me tenfold. So it's like, to me, it's like the least I could do.
Yeah. I think those are really solid strategies. I think that like some of us have situations where if we are susceptible to depression, anxiety, one of those things, and somebody close to us is also going through their own depression or anxiety, I think there's like usually like a natural understanding, it's like, I've been there, I've done that. So like, I see what you're going through and I won't take it personally if you don't attend my party. I won't take it personally if you don't call for a bit. But I think that like it can be hard when it happens consistently and like you also want to have, I'm hesitant to say healthy friendships, but like there are certain expectations that you have of relationships and certain things that you want to receive as the other half of that relationship. And it can it can be challenging to be in relationship with people who struggle.
Yes.
And that can be incredibly conflicting and just challenging because if it's someone in your life that you have a history with and, you genuinely care about them and you want to be sensitive, but it's hard going through when people are like in the trenches of it. How do you, I don't know if it's like ego, right? It's like, I didn't get my call today or whatever.
Yeah.
Or if it's hurt feelings or again, like it's natural to sort of have expectations of another person that you're in relationship with, whether it's, friendship, what have you. How do you manage those situations and how do you navigate them?
Yeah, it's such a good question because it literally just happened where I've just gotten better. That's the irony is that like we're having this conversation and it's like, I wanted to have it with you because I finally feel better. And it's only been the last few years were so terrible. But the last 2 years, I completely cut off everyone in my family because I was going through so much mentally and I couldn't figure out how to communicate. Literally did not have the words on how to communicate what I was feeling because, of course, there's always some form of trauma. And I don't use that word loosely because thankfully I don't have, severe. It's just, for me, it was abandonment, right? We all have some form of it. And so at the time when I cut everyone off, I had my, I was on my last straw and I couldn't handle it anymore. And I handled it terribly because that's not the way you should, be operating with the people you're closest to. But at the time I didn't know any other way. And when you think about it, I was going through hormone imbalance. So I literally foggy brain, anxiety, panic attack, looking for a job, scared of my finances. And it was really difficult to like have those conversations with family about like why and where was I? And there's a lot of nuance to what was happening on both sides. But like, I have to say that my friends where there was, and listen, it's easy for me to say that because they knew exactly what was going on, but they were so kind. And that was missing in my life. And that's what I realized I actually needed in my life that I wasn't getting, with all due respect to my family. Because we just, you operate differently with your friends and your family. And especially in different cultures like mine, very intense. Being Middle Eastern, very intense. First generation, forget it. Like, a lot of pressure. So yeah, like I don't do things. I am a human being that makes a lot of mistakes, and I try to take ownership for them. And as I got older, it's very easy for me to be like, I'm so sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I made a mistake. When I was younger, I was the most stubborn person you can think of. And I was extremely like defensive, because to me at the time, the reason for it was because everyone else was doing the things I'm being accused of. So it's very difficult to live in a world when that's happening. So you sort of do end up building your ego up higher than your true self. And then you realize like, well, this is not getting me anywhere. And I need to now take accountability, because I don't want to live in this world where I'm like just constantly defensive and just like reacting.
Well, ultimately the question becomes like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Exactly.
And if you see that like the decisions that you're making, maybe they feel good in the moment, maybe, but are they like long-lasting, sustainable happiness and fulfillment? And if they're not, then it just benefits you more than anyone else to make a change. But I'll say this too, like I have a very good friend of mine who definitely struggles with mental health stuff, and she's so aware of it. And like the way that we've been able to navigate it for as long as we have, because I've known her since I was very young, is sort of just similar to what you described, which is like when she's in a good place, she's very forthcoming and direct with me about like, I know I was like just owning what happened for the last bit of time.
Yeah.
So they're never like, there feels like there's just an ownership of it, honesty about it, and calling it for what it is and being like, I was a shitty friend. Like I was just a shitty friend and I'm sorry and I love you and I don't mean to, and like not much even needs to be said than just owning it, and just like owning that like, that's not the me that I want to be. I was really struggling through something. Because I feel like when we're in it, like if I'd personalize it, like if I were in her shoes, when I'm in her shoes, not if, like when I'm in her shoes, I do what you do, it sounds like I definitely prefer to isolate myself. Like I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to, like the last thing I want to do is socialize. I feel like normally the last thing I want to do is socialize. Nonetheless, when I'm like really in it. And so when I get out of it, I just, I'm like, that's not, that didn't help anything. And in fact, like it almost feels sometimes like it makes it worse, right? Because then you're aware also that you disappointed people. And then it's just this cycle that we go through. But I think like ultimately just being honest about it and what your best intentions look like, with the people that you love, it's just really important to communicate that as much as possible, right?
I agree. No, I totally agree. I also think like there's a part, the way that I move today is like, we're all selfish and we should be. There's a certain aspect of us that we just have to be, because we have to put on the mask first, right? In order to help other people. And I'll always say that and believe that. And there's another part where you also have to meet people where they are. And like, if they're not willing, and if there's a cycle, there's a pattern that this is the way they operate, I think it's best to communicate like, listen, I know you're going through something and I'm just going to be here and waiting for you. Now, if you don't want to be that person because you're sick of dealing with it, you have every right to leave that friendship. Like, I don't think people should be judged on these things. It's a very difficult thing to handle. Like, not everyone is capable of handling somebody who's going through a mental crisis.
Or even just stepping back from it,
Correct.
like maybe whatever is going on in your life, whatever it is, like you can also take a pause from it. Because I happen to agree with you. I think the word selfish gets a really bad rap, and all that it really means at the end of the day is that you're doing something for yourself. Like, why would that be such a negative thing? But of course, it has this negative connotation. So I think that like, okay to take a pause. It's okay to say like, I need a break. Like, and you're not this like evil, horrible friend by doing so.
And I think two more points here is like, women need to be more selfish. So we're naturally giving. We're naturally caretaking. So like, it's okay to be a little more selfish, And when you get to my age, you literally don't give a shit about anything. And you are very comfortable in your own skin. So like, there's a beauty in aging too, because you do come to that point. The other part I wanted to mention was like, you're saying you isolate. I think the thing that we don't say enough is how much COVID did to us in terms of isolation. Like, it's made us more introverted than we should be. And so more of us are reacting to things by ghosting. by isolation, right? And by like shutting people out. And I think that's due to the pandemic. So like there also needs to be something where you're like, wait a minute, I never used to do this. I used to be such an extrovert. It's like, okay, let's find that person again.
I've been saying for a while, like, it's like, did we just used to have more energy? Because like I go into the city 1 or 2 days a week max. And I get home and I'm like, oh my God, how did I ever do this 5 days a week?
Yeah.
But it was like our life is what we did. I was so much more active, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, is it just that we had more energy back then? Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm a few years older now. We're all a few years older. I don't think it changed that dramatically. I think you just get accustomed to what we're all used to, and the world completely changed. And I appreciate you bringing up COVID too, because like we all just like white knuckled our way through it and like survived it, but not enough people acknowledge and talk about the huge, like extensive impact that it obviously had on everybody. I think almost because everybody went through it, right? Nobody really escaped it. It's even more swept under the rug because it's like, well, I mean, we all went through it, it's like, but yeah, that means we should talk about it more. Like, we should understand it doesn't make it any less intense what we went through. Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you bringing that up as well. Yeah. I mean, this again, like there's so many mental health conversations to have. Like we're I think we're talking about a lot of the ones that a lot of people that I know at least experience the most often, like anxiety, depression. We talked about ADHD a little bit, but just, stress. But I appreciate the slant of, talking about it from like a female perspective in particular, because I do feel like there's absolutely a distinction with, generally speaking, how we as women manage it based on what we were taught for generations and generations of other women. But, hormones, which is how we started this whole conversation, like incredibly powerful, and not enough people even think to, if they're experiencing a symptom of this, that, or the other, they don't even think that like that could be the cause.
Yeah.
And it's wild to me. I mean, in my journey of even just like trying to get pregnant for the past 2 years, I mean, I just learned that, measuring your levels, they change, they fluctuate, and the littlest bit of change can make you feel so different. Yeah. The littlest bit of change in your body could be the difference between not getting pregnant for 2 years and getting pregnant. Like all these things affect us. And just we're so used to that grind. I think that we become a little unconscious about all this, where it's like, I'm just used to my routine. I'm just used to getting my work done, waking up every day, feeding my pets, whatever it is. And we get too accustomed to feeling like garbage. And talking about selfish, it's important to be selfish and know that like you shouldn't have to struggle in feeling less well than you used to, than other people. Like there are cures out there, or, ways to just feel better.
Yeah.
So in that regard, like if somebody were, listening to this right now or watching or what have you, and they're like, my energy is low, I just don't feel like myself. Like I feel like a shift. What advice would you give them as just like, at least do this?
Yeah. I'd say at least go to your doctor. And depending on your age, obviously if you're, in your 30s and up, you can easily go to your doctor and ask them for, when you're doing your physical, to make sure that you're checking your hormones and your thyroid, because all of those things are sort of intertwined. That could be one or the other or both. In my case, it's been both. And start working out, start exercising more. It's always good to like deal with stress. Exercising, sleep is really important. I get 8 hours of sleep every night. I have to, because I am not a functioning person if I don't. And I work very early hours. I live in LA, but I work Eastern Standard hours. So I start work at 7. And so I have to do that. And then, so at least start there. The working out, the doctor, working out, and sleeping are like essential. And then eating healthier. And then other stuff can come, right? Like when you're ready to see a therapist and look for one, great. When you're ready to start journaling your thoughts, great. And meditation. wonderful, but I think the core for me was like sleeping well, going to the gym, and seeing a doctor.
Yeah, I love that. And talking to more women too, like being open about it. Cause there's also something to say for just talking about whatever's internally going on. Like sometimes a lot of us feel shame about it, guilt, whatever it is. The more that you can just get it out, whether it's someone a therapist, like whoever you feel comfortable with, the more often that you're able to just speak that out into the world, like your shame or guilt just like diminishes and diminishes. There were, I'll speak personally, there were like body image issues that I had for years, like still do to a certain extent.
Same.
But I remember maybe like probably in my 20s, like there were certain things that like I literally, like if the conversation came up amongst friends, I would just like freeze. Like words literally couldn't come out of my mouth because of how uncomfortable that topic like was inside of me.
Yeah.
And then slowly but surely, like I talked about it with one person, just like a very slow process, and then talked about it with someone else and shared an experience or shared this, and it becomes easier. It becomes lighter. You physically feel lighter because this like whatever heaviness that existed around you, that like, internal strife is heavy. It just like slowly chip away at it simply by like speaking it into the world and not just keeping it like held up inside,
Yeah, we put so much weight on the things that are on our minds when all we have to do is just offload them to the right person. And that just in and of itself could help solve the problem.
Solve everything. So I appreciate you having this conversation today. Like, again, of course, there's like so much to dive into and so much more to talk about, but it's a topic that I love personally talking about, which is just like what we're all feeling, what we're like, because this is like the honest side of everybody. Everybody's experiencing this stuff to a certain extent. And like, it feels lighter to talk about and to relate to people, and to know that there's hope out there also, that you're not in it alone, especially. So I appreciate you coming on and having this conversation. Thank you. I'm going to leave in the show notes, just, ways to get in touch with you. And you're just so active in our organization as well. And so you're a wealth of information from influencer marketing to just like real life practical everything. So a wonderful person to know, and also one of our LA ambassadors. So if you're in LA on the West Coast and traveling through, Sourma is one of our ambassadors, and like just bringing that community together and having more like takeaways like this, like imagine how lovely that is. So thank you for all of your insights, and I appreciate you guys listening, and thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week. If you enjoyed this episode, we gotta have you back. Check out our website for more ways to get involved, including all the information you need about joining our collective. You can check out all the information at iamwim.com. Leave us a review, a rating, but the most important thing that we can ask you to do is to share this podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Tune in next week.